When I heard about Lindsey Graham's death, of course, one of the first things I did was check how Russian propaganda was covering it. Almost every state or pro-Kremlin outlet ran the same headline: one of America's leading Russophobes has died. They're not introducing Lindsey Graham as a US senator or Republican or a longtime supporter of Ukraine. They introduce him first and foremost as a Russophobe. This word appears in headline after headline. And by the way, look at this. Every mention of his name is accompanied by an asterisk. It indicates that Russia has officially designated him a terrorist and extremist. And this is, I would say, the final stage of a narrative that Russian propaganda has been building for years. The obituary published by the state news agency RIA Novosti even includes a separate section called Russophobic Rhetoric. It lists Graham's harshest statements about Russia, including a quote claiming that he called the death of Russians the best money the United States has ever spent. As you probably can guess, he never said that. Back in 2023, Russian media circulated an edited video from Graham's meeting with President Zelensky in Kyiv. Independent fact-checkers later demonstrated that two completely different remarks had been stitched together to create a sentence Graham never actually said. However, the fabricated quote entered the Russian media space and has been repeated ever since. So when Graham dies, the Russian media don't simply report his death. They reinforce the image they have spent years constructing: a Russophobe, an enemy of Russia, a Ukraine lobbyist, a terrorist, and so on. And there is another interesting detail. RIA Novosti ends its obituary by mentioning that Graham was unmarried and had no children. In the context of today's Kremlin messaging, it subtly suggests that he failed to embody so-called traditional values. But something more important and interesting happened in 2023. After the doctored video spread across Russian media, RT, Russia Today editor-in-chief Margarita Simonyan effectively called for Graham's assassination on Russian television, saying, "It's not even hard, we have his address." Also in 2023, Russian ultranationalist ideologue Alexander Dugin wrote, "Better to kill this guy. He's a problem for Trump." Looking back, today's coverage feels like the culmination of a long-running campaign. Perhaps the most revealing part is the repetition of the word Russophobe. When you see it in almost every headline, it begins to imply something beyond the political label, almost as if hatred of Russia itself is what ultimately brought the senator to his grave. And you know, there are already some conspiracy theories that his death might not have been natural. So I would say the case of Lindsey Graham is a textbook example of how Russian propaganda works. It takes a real person, reduces them to a label, repeats that label for years through state media, officials, and security agencies, and eventually turns the individual into some sort of symbol. And once that symbol has been created, every new event simply reinforces the story that audiences have already been taught to believe.